I feel highly entertained by Tinubu's rhetorics, the way he's dramatizing his own role, in Nigerian democracy. Luckily, we're all alive. Please go. Luckily, we're all alive. We're all there. Tinubu became relevant and noticeable after Abacha took over government.
That's a lie from the pit of hell. Tinubu was one of the founders and one of the organizers, one of the planners of all the protests, July 23, 24, 25 of 1993 against the annulment. This was well before Abacha. Abacha did not come until November 17th, 1993.
His own mother, Haja Mogaji from Lagos, was organizing Lagos marching women to come to Abuja to pledge, support for Babangida. I'm saying this because it's simply history. I mean no harm. I mean don't mean to embarrass him. But then you see, he was actively handing gloves to Babangida.
On the annulment of June 12, I recall vividly that Alhaja Mogaji not only begged IBB, she came to Abuja to kneel down and weep before IBB. It was Sule Lamido and Tony Aneni, the late Aneni, that were the executive members of the party, chairman and secretary. They signed away the mandate of June 12. They agreed and they traded it off. They agreed with the interim government arrangement, which the Tinubu and the Papa Jashi, when he was saying that some of them were not even supporters of June 12, is a lie. That was how the Sule Lamido and co traded off that mandate. So his attempt at revisionism is actually to cover up his pernicious tracks. So
we fought Abacha. We fought him because we were willing to risk our lives. Tinubu ran away. He was not in the country. He only came back after the whole thing was after the call was very, very clear. So the NADECO were more concerned with the victory than the victor. As far as they are concerned, in the bathwater they are trying to use, they are trying to hang on to their own kind of riding on top to reinvent, history in Nigeria. Otherwise, I feel embarrassed for the president, for the way he's talking, honestly. Ask anybody. Ask Ayu, ask Gerigana. They are all there. Ask Rangiwa. People, who had no political pedigree, who had no political history, who are not known as fighters, are now at the forefront fighting for Nigerian democracy. It's so laughable.
Tinubu's house was firebombed in Musa Yar'Adua Crescent in VI. Immediately, Abacha dissolved all its democratic structures. It was Tinubu himself, Ame Ebute, Senator Abu Ibrahim, and another Nwite or something, I've forgotten the fourth name, that issued a statement restoring all the dissolved democratic structures. They issued a directive that he must be brought in dead or alive. It was at that point he had to leave.
Behind every rumor, there's an element of truth.
The former governor of Jigawa State, Vice President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on the way we be say they handle democracy. He's saying they're very embarrassed the way President Bola Ahmed Tinubu they handle democracy. He don't summer serious allegation on top President Bola Ahmed Tinubu head. And this allegation, he no dates back because people don't they gossip and mono since. In fact, so this time around, Oga, former governor of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido, don't claim say President Bola Ahmed Tinubu be part of those people who been support the annulment, that is the cancellation of the June 12, 1993 presidential election. And in the claim saying follow for those who fight for democracy. Saying a lie, he no fight for any democracy. And it was shocking to hear him say this. Now, Lamido stated this, of course, on Arise Television yesterday, Saturday. According to him, Tinubu's mother, Hajia Mogaji, organized market women from Lagos to come to Abuja and show support for the then head of state, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. He said Babangida they are like when they go ask him. So that is to say that he was not in support of democracy. Him and his family were fully supporting the people heading us then, will be the military at that time. Lamido further said that Lamido also claimed that the National Democratic Coalition will be the NADECO, where Oga Tinubu say in be part of, say them fight for democracy, that it was only formed to fight for the late General Sani Abacha and not for June 12. That the essence not just to fight, the essence of NADECO was just to fight Abacha. It wasn't to fight the June 12. That did not even do to. They no answer matter we concern June 12. They did not respond. They did not fight for the June 12 or the cancellation or annulment of June 12. Quoting him, he said, I feel highly entertained by Tinubu's rhetoric, the way he's dramatizing his role in Nigeria's democracy. Tinubu became relevant and noticeable after Abacha took over the government. Before then, he was in the Senate while he was the secretary of the party. He was he was part of those who supported IBB's annulment of the June 12 election. That is a serious allegation that our president who fought for democracy supported an annulment of fairest and fairest election we've had so far. Now, quoting him further, he says, his own mother, Hajia Mogaji, was organizing Lagos market women to come to Abuja to pledge support for Babangida. Tinubu was actively hand in glove with Babangida. His words, not mine, and I'll play the video when we're done. NADECO was postulation formation to fight Abacha, not for June 12, not to fight for democracy, to fight Abacha deliberately. Now, the June 12 election was won by MKO Abiola, but the presidency has swiftly reacted, strongly refuted these recent claims by the former Jigawa state governor, Alhaji Sule Lamido, regarding President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's role during the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election, describing it as false and revisionist. The presidency expressed concern over Lamido's comments made during a live television appearance, in which he accused, of course, President Bola Tinubu of all of those stuffs. Right. Now, the statement emphasized that Lamido's remarks amounted to blatant distortion of Nigeria's democratic history. The presidency defended Tinubu's mother, Alhaja Mogaji, Tinubu's mother, noting that she never aligned with any pro-annulment movement. Now, part of the statement read, the attention of the presidency has been drawn to recent comments made by Alhaji Sule Lamido, former Jigawa state governor, on live television, in which he falsely accused President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of supporting the annulment of June 12 in 1993 presidential election. Alhaji Lamido's claim represents a distortion of history and a regrettable attempt at revisionism. He alleged that President Tinubu only rose to prominence over the formation of NADECO and claimed that Tinubu's mother, Alhaji Mogaji, mobilized market women to back the annulment. These allegations are patently false, he said. But then Lamido also accused the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, of running away during that period, saying in be no day. How you go say you fight for annulment or you fight for something when you were not even on ground to fight for the thing that you ran away, you were in the United States. And Lamido claims say na them being there on ground to fight until then gets the democracy. So say why he be say he go come now the front himself as person where he be say nine, be the head of democracy. A lot of people been done also talking in the past, especially involving in relationship with some people them way be say na Abacha henchmen during in time. Now, which makes some people they talk say there's likely some truth in this. But let me take a reaction before I play that video, sir.
Precious. The truth of the matter is that Nigeria is becoming a country without history. It's becoming a country without truth. It's becoming a country where justice is lacking. It's becoming a country where lies is becoming the order of the day. Yes, I know that there's a lot of distortions that have taken place, and a lot of things have been said about June 12th. A lot of people have claimed to be the arrowheads of fighting for democracy or return to civil rule in Nigeria. And from what you've said and from what I've read, I think there are two things that Alhaji Lamido was pointing out. And those two things is that, one, people were fighting for democracy. People were fighting for June 12th against the cancellation of June 12th. And another people were fighting for return to civil rule. And from what he has said, it is obvious that our current president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was not in the forefront of fighting for June 12th. From what he's saying, that he's not. Maybe he participated in fighting for a return to democratic governance. And, for me, I think that there's some element of truth. I wasn't there. I don't know what played out amongst them. But you see, it is only the politicians who participated in an act that can tell you the truth. So for Lamido to say this, there must be an element of truth somewhere. Behind every rumor, there's an element of truth. And it's not, it didn't speak like any of the Nigerian politicians that we know that will come out and say, some people. No, he mentioned names. And that is why I give it to him. And that is why I would want people, all those who were involved in the June 12 struggle, all those who were involved in fighting for the return to civil rule. This is an opportunity for them to come out and tell Nigerians the truth, so that we know what truly transpired. IPB is still alive. IPB needs to clear the air and tell Nigerians who and what role the people play. The Abacha family, they are there. Al-Mustafa is still there. He's one of those who should come out and tell Nigerians the role people played. We need to know. So it's not something that will be hidden forever. The truth can never be hidden forever. So if Lamido is saying that, it's just like what the American government is saying, and the CIA and all of that saying that your president is an active asset. And the presidency has not come to deny it. They've not come to tell us the kind of asset he is. So these are the things that are making people question the integrity and otherwise of this president.
So say before now, a lot of people be not the rumor be not they go around say it is some even people away from the southwest extraction way betray MKO. People were telling him, don't agree, don't agree. You cannot be a slave in your own father's land. Don't agree to that. And they were doing it deliberately because they didn't want peace. They wanted it to be used against him. Could this thing that Lamido stated be part of those allegations or those rumors flying around at that time?
Precious, that before now, like you said, people have been saying that the cancellation of June 12th could not have been done solely by the military, that even people from the Southwest were solidly behind it. And, that's why a lot of us kept wondering that after the cancellation, suddenly, Shoneka came out from nowhere and was made the interim president. People were asking, you leave the man who we all said won the election, you allowed him to pass on and all of that, then you are bringing an interim person to take over. See, the unfortunate thing, or where we found ourselves today, is because the man, in the middle of the storm, that is the two people in the middle of the storm, one is late MK Abiola, the other one is late Abacha. They are not alive today to tell their own story. But I believe that their own family members and those who worked closely with them should be able to come out and tell us what really played out. We deserve to know. It helps us, it helps our children, generations born and generations unborn, to know what really played out during the June 12 crisis. We want to know who and who was involved and what roles these persons played.
All right, so make a quickly go bring that video.
I feel highly entertained by Tinubu's rhetorics, the way he's dramatized his own role, in Nigerian democracy. Luckily, we're all alive. Please go. Luckily, we're all alive. We're all there. We're all, participants in that particular, sphere of political activity. So I was in the middle of it. Tinubu became relevant and noticeable after Abacha took over government. Before then, he was in the Senate, was the secretary of the party. And with all respect to him, you see, he was part of those people who were supporting Babangida's annulment of June 12. He was part of it. His own mother, Haja Mogaji from Lagos, was organizing Lagos marching women to come to Abuja to pledge, support for Babangida. I'm saying this because it's simply history. I mean no harm. I mean don't mean to embarrass him. But then you see, he was actively handing gloves to Babangida. Now, when Babangida saw the fact that he was having a problem with the party, he went to the National Assembly to address them. One infamous speech was, they are trying to incite you. It is you they are against. Tinubu was there, and the IU became very, very firm and straight on the issue of June 12. He called a meeting, then being the only senior elected person in government at that time, as Senate President. He convened a meeting in Edo, in Benin. We went there with the governor, where we went there and reaffirmed our commitment to June 12. All right? Babangida was so angry with Ayu. When he came back, he removed him and put in a better arrow. A better arrow, or, he put him there so that, so that they can be aligned to Babangida, political kind of machinations. So when Tinubu today, after being a Nigerian president, decided to rewrite history, well, trying to maybe deconstruct history and then rewrite it, then it is a very, very amusing, because he was part of the Babangida was support of June 12. He was part of it. Now, it was only when Abacha took over government that Tinubu then became a so-called activist of June 12. Not only him, all those who are talking about June 12 in NADECO, I mean no harm, I mean no disrespect. I'm simply saying what happened during that time. All of them, those people in NADECO, where were they on June 11? They had no part in June 12. They are not part of June 12 campaign. They are not part of the June 12 activities. What they are never, because most of them are saying they should down look. All of them, because they don't believe they won't work out. So when Abiola won the election, and then after the annulment, they are all very, very passive. But suddenly, after Abacha came on board, removing Sonekam, they became activists. They formed NADECO. NADECO was opposed to Abacha, was opposed to election formation. NADECO was something which was formed, to fight Abacha, not to fight democracy, not to fight for June 12. So whatever Tinubu is doing today is simply reconstructing history the way he thinks it's going to fit his own political interests. But then obviously he was a major supporter of Babangida. Ask Babangida, ask him. So when you talk about, already June 12, what are those characters? Ebote Ere, somebody who replaced Ayu for June 12? Who are the others? All of them. So he ran away. We stayed behind. We fought Abacha. I was detained, because of my fight, but I was detained. Really was detained. So all of us, Adamu Churuma, Bola Ege, Yoche Ayu, Kwame, and many others, Bagaji, all of them were there. We fought Abacha. We fought him because we were willing to risk our lives. Tinubu ran away. He was not in the country. He only came back after the whole thing was, after the call was very, very clear. So what I'm saying is, all those advocates of June 12, they are more concerned with the bath water rather than the baby. They are more concerned because most of them were at the end of the meal when the product was being processed. They simply picked up the product. The process which produced the product, they are not there. They're not part of it. They only pick the product. And today it's not about the victor, but it's about the victory more than anything else. So we make this kind of distinction. There is a difference between the victory and the victor. The NADECO were more concerned with the victory than the victor. As far as they are concerned, in the bathwater they are trying to use, they are trying to hang on to their own kind of riding on top to reinvent, history in Nigeria. Otherwise, I feel embarrassed for the president, for the way he's talking. Honestly, ask anybody. Go ask anybody. We're all there. Ask Ayu, ask Gerigana. They're all there. Ask Langiwa. So what is happening today in Nigeria is simply something very, very laughable. People, who had no political pedigree, who had no political history, who are not known as fighters, are now at the forefront fighting for Nigerian democracy. It's so laughable.
Well, honestly speaking, this is mind-blowing. It's filled with a lot of revelations, especially coming from somebody like Sule Lamido, who we know is a bright mind. And if you listen to him talk, you will know that he's speaking from his heart. So it's not left for those who package Mr. President, those who work for him, and those names he has mentioned. It's now left for them to come forward and tell Nigerians the truth.
Contrarily to his own entertainment perspective, I feel very appalled at his own submissions, which I would ascribe largely to selective amnesia at best, or at the very worst, an impairment of the oblongata, medulla oblongata, due to some atrophy of age, or memory loss in layman's terms. Now, Sule Lamido himself was the guilty party to the sustenance of the annulment of that June 12 election. Sule Lamido did not know so many things. Don't forget that IBB established two major parties, a little to the right, a little to the left. And the National Republican Convention, NRC was to the right, SDP was to the left. Now, Sule Lamido was secretary of the SDP, because prior to then, he was posturing as a leftist, as a socialist. Even Tinubu played a critical role in the emergence of MKO as candidate well before the election. Tinubu emerged as candidate of SDP in Jos, at the Jos primaries in March. I was there. In fact, while that election...
MKO.
MKO. Tinubu was also there. Now, there were two factions that formed the nucleus or the caucuses of SDP. One was led by the late General Musa Yar'Adua. That was the People's Front, PF. The second was the People's Social Party, PSP. Now, the People's Front was led by Yar'Adua. The PSP was formed by the Jakondes, the late Jakondes, the Ajashins, and all of that. They were the progressive wing of the SDP. So these two caucuses coalesced to form SDP. Now, Sule Lamido, Tinubu, historically, this is a historical fact, belonged in the Yar'Adua faction, the People's Front. But on the formation of SDP, it became one party. Now, Yar'Adua still held sway within the SDP. So, at the Jos primaries in March of 1993, the groundswell of support for MKO to become the candidate was overwhelming. However, if you recall, those students of history will recall that there was a statement. This Atiku also ran on the same SDP for the presidency in 1993. Atiku has been at that game since 1993 till tomorrow. He ran as a presidential aspirant, also in Jos. The Kingibe ran, MKO ran. There was a stalemate in the first ballot between Kingibe and MKO. So there were horse trading and negotiations to get Atiku to drop his ambition and align with the MKO group. This same Tinubu was instrumental, was one of the principal people that led the negotiations, participated actively in the negotiations in Kantibelo's house in Jos, with Yar'Adua presiding, to persuade Atiku to drop his own aspiration and align with MKO, which eventually occurred. So when the second ballot in the Jos Stadium was on, of course, it was obvious that MKO was coasting home to victory. While that election was going on, while voting was going on in the stadium, myself, Tunji Bello, Segun Babatope, the late Chike Akabogu, we were drafting MKO's victory speech, which he read right there in the stadium. We left, MKO became candidate. Then we came to this Abuja for the convention of the to elect the executives of the party. The two caucuses, the People's Front and the PSP, locked horns here in the Sheraton Hotel. Then it was the Sheraton Hotel in 1993. And, of course, the Yar'Adua faction got the upper hand. That was how Sule Lamido became secretary of the party, and the late Tony Aneni became the chairman of the party.
All right.
And that, since then, the campaign for election began, and Tinubu threw everything he had into it. So it was patently false and a revisionism and a hagiography to say that Tinubu only became relevant in the June 12 movement after the annulment.
All right.
Not at all.
Tinubu supported the annulment. I mean, now we're going after the election. So he supported the annulment of June 12 presidential election.
Well,
that
that was
a false claim.
Not only false. I said it's hagiography and an attempt at revisionism, and an attempt to cover his own pernicious role in supporting and trading off that critical sacred mandate given to MKO. And I will explain to you. Immediately after the announcement, in fact, don't forget that the first thing that shocked the whole nation was the suspension of results announcement on June the 16th. The election was June 12th. Results started dropping in, and everybody knew MK was coasting home to victory. On that June 16, myself and Tunji Bello is still alive. We were with MK in his sitting room in Ikeja, and we were reviewing events. In fact, we were asking him, because we still owed some advertisers some money, so he now asked me to go and bring the bill for him to settle. And I remember his words, I quote, he didn't want to get into the presidency with debt, so he wanted to clear. So I went, I didn't find the bills. By the time I got back, Nduka Irabo had released the statement, unsigned statement from the villa, suspending the continuation of the results. That was the first initial salvo against June 12. And on June 23rd, the final nail on the coffin was put in by the entire cancellation of that result, of the election. And then, of course, we plunged into the struggle. Now, Tinubu, immediately after the annulment was announced, of course, threw his hat into the ring. Don't also forget that the late Yar'Adua's mother or father or somebody died in Katsina. MKO, we were with him in his sitting room in Lagos. He was making arrangements to fly to Katsina to go and sympathize with. It was this same Tinubu that he was liaising with. And Olu Akerele is alive. If he's watching, he knows to get air clearance for his aircraft to land in Katsina. At the same time, Babangida was flying to Katsina to also sympathize. So the airspace was restricted for any other aircraft. So by the time MKO came, sympathized with Yar'Adua, the announcement had been made for the total cancellation. It was this same Tinubu that MKO called. Immediately he landed in Lagos to start the preparations for the onslaught against that unjustifiable announcement. So Tinubu was from the get-go deeply involved in the struggle to actualize this mandate, and he went on it. Where was Sule Lamido?
So how come?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
When the initial wave of protests against the annulment, where was Lamido? I can tell you authoritatively, because I was part and parcel of the protest, the planning and execution. Tinubu was one of the funders and one of the organizers, one of the planners of all the protests, July 23, 24, 25 of 1993 against the annulment. This was well before Abacha. Abacha did not come until November 17th, 1993. And how Abacha also came was not behind us. We knew, and now you will see the photo that's making the rounds when MKO went to see Abacha upon Abacha's assumption of office. You see that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was in that picture. MKO, Tinubu, and Abacha. Asiwaju was the one that escorted MKO to go and see Abacha to negotiate how Abacha will relinquish office and hand over back to MKO. How Tinubu came to accompany MKO was something that had been crafted the night before, and I was there. I'm a living witness. Where was Sule Lamido now when Tinubu was doing all of this?
The president's mother.
Yeah.
Organizing market women from Lagos to show support for then head of state IBD Ibrahim.
That's a lie from the pit of hell. Alhaji Abibat Mogaji was a very prominent and important market leader in Lagos who commanded large following among the women folk and market people in Lagos. Obviously, there was no government pre-IBB that did not seek the endorsement or support of Alhaji Mogaji's large movement in Lagos at the time. Now, Alhaji Mogaji, IBB also, as a government, as a leader, sought the support of the market women. However, on the annulment of June 12, I recall vividly that Alhaji Mogaji not only begged IBB, she came to Abuja to kneel down and weep before IBB.
Okay, so that's where the coming to Abuja came in.
She
but
came
not
to
for
Abuja.
The purposes of mobilizing for IBB.
No. It was to beg IBB to reverse the annulment. And we were all witnesses anyway to when she left and came back and gave the reports. That was what happened. Now, when IBB was stepping aside, he brought in this contraption called Interim National Government, ING. Now, Tinubu and other pro-democracy, pro-June 12 activists were strenuously fighting for the restoration of that mandate. However, IBB got the Yar'Adua people, faction of the party, that held the executive positions of SDP via Tony Aneni, who was chairman, and Sule Lamido, the secretary, to agree to that contraption, why the Tinubu and other pro-June 12 Democrats refused and insisted on the restoration of the mandate. It was the chairman, but they were not in the executive. It was Sule Lamido and Tony Aneni, the late Aneni, that were the executive members of the party, chairman and secretary. They signed away the mandate of June 12. They agreed and they traded it off. They agreed with the interim government arrangement, which the Tinubu and other, the Papa Jashi, when he was saying that some of them were not even supporters of June 12, is a lie. So that was how the Sule Lamido and co traded off that mandate. So his attempt at revisionism is actually to cover up his pernicious tracks.
So wouldn't you, I mean, he also said that NADECO was formed to fight, claims NADECO was formed to fight for late Abacha. And not for June 12. Just hold on a bit.
Wow.
Regurgitating what he said. And then he also says that Tinubu, this one is well known. Tinubu, well, according to him, he left the country while the fight for democracy was ongoing. Tinubu didn't leave the country. I mean, the president didn't leave the country.
I also left at some point when our lives became endangered. We were endangered species. I also had to leave. Tinubu's house was firebombed in Musa Yar'Adua Crescent in VI. Let me tell you the genesis of that. When Abacha took over, eventually after Abacha took over, you know, don't forget that Sule Lamido and Tony Aneni traded off the mandate, agreed with IBB for the setting up of interim government, and then Ernest Shonekan came, and we still continue the struggle against the ING, and they are living witnesses. Anyway, the ING became, we made Nigeria ungovernable for ING, and it became a hot seat for Ernest Shonekan. So I can mention some names, you know, but I don't want to embarrass them. Some military men that we actually went to. Segun Babatope is alive, wherever he is, he will be watching. That we went to warn that this ING will never last, that the Southwest people will never support it because they did not vote for Ernest Shonekan. And we are very principled when it comes to power. Anyway, so the ING didn't last. However, Abacha took over. Immediately, the idea for Abacha taking over was that he was coming to restore June 12. That was the idea. And I was not outside of that circle. And the president, our current president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, was also in the know. Myself, himself, Tuji, Dr. Odoyin Abiola, we were with MKO before the taking over. We discussed all the parameters, how Abacha was to come in to restore the mandate. But unfortunately, Abacha had his own agenda. So as soon as he assumed office, he dissolved all democratic structures, right? If Tinubu was for Abacha, have you forgotten, for the purpose of the younger generation, immediately Abacha dissolved all democratic structures. It was Tinubu himself, Ame Ebute, Senator Abu Ibrahim, and another Nwite or something, I've forgotten the first name, that wrote a statement, issued a statement, restoring all the dissolved democratic structures. Now, have you ever seen such courage to confront a military leader? The Abacha dissolved democratic structures. These people issued a statement restoring the democratic structures. Of course, what would happen? They were hounded into detention in Alagbo. I, myself, Dele Alake, I was going there to Alagbo as a leg operative because Tinubu inside Alagbo was still funding us outside to sustain the protest. I am a living witness. I was running errands, going inside Alagbo, you know, to give information and then take directives, come out to the people outside and all of that. If Tinubu was working for Abacha, how would he be doing that? How would he be confronting Abacha frontally, not overtly, not covertly, overtly, that he was in jail, in detention? And in fact, there was a time they issued a directive that he must be found, he must be brought in dead or alive. It was at that point he had to leave through the famous NADECO route.
Abacha issued the directive.
That's right. The Abacha goons were all over looking for him. And I remember that.
So that was the reason
that he left.
So he didn't run away. Lamido says he
Where
left.
was Lamido? The Lamidos of this world were hands in gloves with the Abacha regime. So they did not face any harassment because they were not even for June 12 anyway. So they were safe. But the people fighting Abacha for the restoration of that mandate were the victims of harassment and oppression. And Tinubu was the forefront of it. I just told you his house in VI was firebombed. If he was working for Abacha, will he go through all of that? I tell you, if I tell you how he even smuggled himself out of the country from Anthony in Lagos, he was held in a clinic. If he's watching, I'm sure he will be smiling. He was holed up in a clinic to say that he was ill when the order came that he must be brought in dead or alive. Don't forget that in a revolutionary struggle, you also have sympathizers, even within the security apparatus. So we were receiving direct, sensitive intel. And that was why he disguised and left the country. And it wasn't only him. Professor Sule Lamido was also hounded out. Professor Bolaji Akiyemi was hounded out. General Akinrade was, General Akinrade's house in Okpebi was also firebombed before he left. And they grouped in London. I was editor of the paper, of the Concord, which we were using as the media, the voice to promote the struggle. So I also came under fire, intense fire.
And so you had to leave too.
And I had to leave too, and join forces with Ashiwaju, Professor Bolaji Akiyemi. Professor Sule Lamido was making the rounds all over the world, giving talks against the regime at home. In fact, the NADECO meeting, the nucleus of the NADECO movement abroad in London, was the office of that NADECO was hosted by General Alani Akinrade, one of his flats off Edgware Road. That's where we met every Tuesday. Myself, Chief John Oyegu is still alive, who was former chairman of APC. He was with us in London on exile. Professor Akinyemi, like I said, the late Commodore Dan Suleiman was also there with us. And then the late Bobonwo Sisi was there with us.
All right.
Tokunbo Afikun-Yomi is still alive, was there with us.
All right, Minister.
That was the nucleus of NADECO abroad. And we were being funded by Ashiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and General Akinrade.
We need to know the truth. He has, like I said, he has opened a can of worms. So let everybody who has been mentioned, let them come forward and tell Nigerians what really happened. Because nobody has really told Nigerians what played out in June 12. Nobody. Even IBB in his book tried to, but there are a lot of hide and seek there. Even when the late Justice Puta, when the reconciliation was the reconciliation committee or whatever set up, a lot of people who would have come to reveal to Nigerians what transpired, they didn't show up. So we need to know so that our youths, our younger generations, and those unborn that Mr. President keeps talking about will know the truth of what has played out. But it feels that our leaders are in the forefront of really, really demarketing this country.
People don't they talk this one, say, for instance, Oga Atiku Bagudu, na Oga Tinubu Minister for Budgets and National Planning, and Chagri, now Oga Tinubu friend. And these people being they indicted at one point or the other for being Abacha henchmen, as in people will be saying Abacha party. So people come to talk, say, how you go say you been the fight Abacha for democracy through NADECO? And then meanwhile, in closest ally, then we be saying even so then they indicted because of say they launder money for them. Now people will be your friends. Wait, so you keep them now, you give them contracts. How could you have fought Abacha and you kept these people close? That's the question people are asking. Is it not possible that a friend to your enemy can still be your friend? Is there anything wrong with that?
Well, when we started your show this evening, I said to you that the politics, especially Nigerian politics, no permanent friend, no permanent enemy. What you have is permanent interest. And I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is looking at a permanent interest where his interest will be protected. And that is why if you really look at this administration, you'll find out that if you want to get an appointment into this government today, all you need to do is go and start criticizing somebody they consider as an opposition. All your sins, everything you've said in the past will be forgotten. When Bagudu's name was submitted, these issues came up. Nigerians raised eyebrow, but you have a country where your Senate, all they do is if you say yeah, if you say no, nay, the eyes have it. So you have a system where you don't even know who is saying and who is saying no. We need to have a system where we know who voted for what. You saw what happened in Kenya. Kenyans were able to know who voted because they know. In Nigeria, you don't know who votes for anything. They said, okay, for you to have a state of emergency, you need to have two-third votes. At the end of the day, they threw the two-third away and went for voice vote, so that you will not know who is saying yes and who is saying no. But if we need to have a proper democratic setting, we have a government that we can really hold accountable, starting from the Senate and the House of Reps, down to the State House Assembly. We need to know those who vote on every issue, so that when we want to criticize, when we want to praise them, when we want to, evaluate them, we will know where to start from. But this whole idea of the A's have it and the I's have it, it's just a ridicule, and it's just a cover-up of what they're doing. So yes, Mr. President understands what he's doing. He understands, for him it is business. Governance in Nigeria is business. And that is why, no matter how bad the person you consider as an enemy is, so long as the person is going to give you value for what you want, you embrace the person. So embracing the Chaguri brothers, who we know had court case against them and all of that, and then putting them in the forefront of Nigeria, it simply shows you how insensitive our politicians can really be.